Hello everybody and welcome back to your favorite Newcomer's Guide to Grim Dawn. Remember when I said that there were only 3 episodes left in this series? Well, that was a whole lot of untruth. Turns out the 2 remaining videos that I had planned actually require an insane amount of effort in-game, so I'll still need to split them up into their own videos. So good for new content, but bad if you're sick of my airline pilot voice. Now strap in for the in-flight movie, because today we are going to be starting down the list of Nemesis bosses. Before we continue though, make sure that you've paid the toll of either 1 like or subscription, and let me know in the comments what you think about this string of videos. If you'll recall from earlier ones, we've briefly touched on the Nemesis and Celestial bosses as the biggest and the baddest mamma jammas in the entirety of Grim Dawn, and that has not changed. So the fact that I thought I could boil them down into 2 20-minute videos is an insane overestimation of my abilities on my part, and my head is much too big even for me sometimes. The point I'm trying to make here is that we will actually be breaking these bosses down into their own videos. The videos will include the locations in which the bosses can spawn, what the bosses have resistances to, the boss abilities, and other things to know before fighting them, as well as the monster and frequency they can drop. In order to do this though, in what I feel like is the most meaningful way, we're going to be using my Reaper build, and we're going to be playing on ultimate difficulty. This build was the most Nemesis reputation farmed, which is also called infamy, and we're going to be going in on ultimate, so it's going to hopefully seem a bit like a challenge rather than just plowing through the build or plowing through the bosses on the other difficulties. This build, again, it's not one that you're going to be used to a whole lot, so it is max leveled, and when you're watching this, this is ultimately everything is going to be over level 100 as far as enemies are concerned. My Reaper is level 100. If you're interested in the build, I guess we could talk about that sometime, but really, it's just for showing you where the bosses are and actually killing them so we can get these videos to not be boring. Also, if you're not max level, don't worry. You can still find the Nemesis spawns in other difficulties. It is not an ultimate only thing. The Celestial bosses, some of them are ultimate only, but we'll get to those when we get to them. Just as far as this one and the other Nemesis bosses go, don't worry about that. The only other thing that I need to mention before we start getting into the details of each boss is that this will be very difficult. And when I say that, I don't mean that they're going to be very time-consuming. Well, I mean, they can be. They can be very time-consuming. But I mean that if you're not properly geared up, they will kill you repeatedly. These bosses are built to absolutely wreck your shit, so you will need to actually prepare for them. Don't have all your augments figured out? Better start farming those. Don't have any ointments or tinctures? Start buying all of them. Are you going to try to brute force the boss without having any idea what it does? Well then prepare to get slapped. And above literally everything else, make sure that your resistances are mega maxed. If you're not at least 80% on all of your damage resistances, you can easily get one shot by these monsters from even 10,000 health and above. Now, if that doesn't make you anxious, let's talk about our first Nemesis boss. These videos are not in any particular order, so if you don't have the reputation adequately farmed for the boss in the video that you're watching, get out there and start pissing off the locals. We're going to start with Valdaran, though, the Storm Scourge. Valdaran is the ethereal Nemesis, and as such, there is a lot of opportunity to farm up Nemesis status with them really quickly. So you're exposed to the ethereal enemies early on, and you can just passively obtain the status with the casual trip through normal and elite. Just remember that the enemies that are much lower level than you will not reward any reputation towards your infamy gain with the Nemesis bar. This isn't a problem if you're playing an ultimate, because everything is bonkers level throughout the entire game, so you'll be getting plenty of infamy. Now, once you obtained the Nemesis status with the Ethereals, though, Valdaran has a chance to spawn in one of 10 locations. There is a lot of area to cover, but as long as you know where to look and where not to look, finding them shouldn't be too hard. It is going to be hard on your time, so if you don't have a lot of time to put into Grim Dawn at any particular day, remember you're going to have to sit still for a while. The reason that this video is a little bit more edited is because it took me about an hour to find which location Valdaran was actually hiding in, and I did go down a list checking things off. So something really important to remember when you're searching for a Nemesis is that the top right corner of the screen will show you which area you are in, and if that location doesn't match with where you need to be, don't keep diving further into the wrong area. You'll see in this video what I mean, but I do not venture out of the areas I need to be in very often. So just keep an eye on that upper right corner and make sure that it matches the list of places you need to check off. Now, the first location we're going to check is the Warden's Cellar in Act 1. There's a rift gate right there, and it's super easy to get to while also being super easy to explore. While you're looking for the big boys, remember that they will show up as big angry skulls on your minimap, so when you're close enough, you will know it as long as you're checking the minimap again up in the right-hand corner. Since he wasn't in the Warden's Cellar, we can move on to the underground transit, which is luckily connected right to the previous location. This location is the one with the devotion shrine in it, so if you see that, you're in the right place. The next spawn location is the Hidden Laboratory, and that is going to be where the Warden's Laboratory Rift Gate is. So that'll drop you right into the Hidden Lab. It's in the area that some of the locations will get pretty smushed together, so you want to keep an eye on your minimap for the skull symbol and the top right for that area title. So if we don't find him in the Hidden Laboratory, you're just going to keep moving north into the Inner Lab. This one is past the living quarters and the abandoned storerooms, and if there's no Valdaran there, we're just going to push all the way to right outside the Warden's door to find the underground jail. The good news is that all of these locations are very linear, so you can easily check them off your list while not having to do a bunch of circuitous traveling. They also account for about half the spawn locations of our Nemesis, so they take a big chunk out of our travel time. The next spawn location is on the opposite side of the world, though, and that is just outside of Homestead. The Gruesome Harvest is the location that you travel through to fight the Amalgamation, and you can take the Rotting Croplands Rift Gate to get there a bit quicker. This is the only spawn near this part of the world, so if you don't get that indicator, you'll know pretty quick if he's not there. Next, there is the Gates of Necropolis location. This one's pretty simple, has its own rift gate, but does take a decent amount of time to traverse. There's a lot of walls and dead ends that make the journey a bit tedious, but eventually, if you make it to the Inner Necropolis rift gate without finding Valdaran, you can check this one off your list as well. At this point, we have 7 locations scouted, and if there is still no boss located, we have to make a trip to Port Valbury. Port VB is a key dungeon located to the east of Homestead, and is luckily where you will catch Valdaran in this video. Now the problem with this is we got lucky and managed to find him outside the Skeleton Key Gate. That's great for me, but maybe not so much for you if you're particularly unlucky that day. Valdaran can also spawn inside Port Valbury, meaning that you'll need a skeleton key to even go looking for him. What's worse is that means that if you don't have a key, you can't get to him if you've checked all the other locations off of your list. Or maybe you do have a key, but you only have one and you can't craft another. Ultimately, you can always restart your session and find him in a different spawn location, but let's be honest, that time commitment can be absolutely rage-inducing if you have already sunk that much into it. Anyway, Port VB is a pretty linear area, so if you don't find him in the landing area, the Port Valbury outskirts, that's the landing area, he'll be located in either the third location, which is Port Valbury Old Town, or the final location, which is Port Valbury High Town. So always go to the key dungeon locations last when you're looking for the Nemesis bosses, because it is never worth it to rip a skeleton key, go in there, waste a bunch of time, potentially die, go back with another skeleton key, only to have the Nemesis not be in there. With all of that location info out of the way, let's talk about the preparation for the boss. So, Valdaran, the Storm Scourge, as the name would suggest, is all about doing lots of lightning damage. On top of that, since he's a Nemesis boss, he's basically immune to CC, and life reduction skills are pretty much ineffective as well. There is also a mountain of other resistances he has, so just to keep it short, remember he's basically a juggernaut. He also has damage resistances, but these don't cover all the damage types up to the amount that your player should be. So remember, there is a way to deal impactful damage to these characters, or these bosses. You just got to know which damage types that they're not built to fight against. So basically, he's got extremely high Aether and Lightning resistance. So if your build uses one or both of those, you may have a little bit of trouble. But if you have something in the vein of Vitality Chaos or Acid Poison, stuff like that, things may end up being a little bit easier for you to get damage done. Particularly, my build, the Reaper build in this video, is mostly Vitality damage. It has a small chunk of Aether damage in it as well, but a lot of what I'll be doing is Vitality, so I'm not super worried about having a lot of my damage shrugged off. Now, if your build is rocking those other non-lightning elements, you'll have a nicer time as well. So if you've just got cold and fire, I'd say that you're mostly in the clear. He does have small resistances to those. He's got small resistances to everything, but the big ones are the lightning and the Aether resist. Also, I would consider when you're going into this getting ointments, specifically the Spirit Bane ointment for Aether resistance, Storm Shroud for lightning and electrocute resistance, whichever elixir that you need that will most efficiently boost your damage type, and then look for those royal jelly potions, whether it's an ointment, salve, whatever, to increase your health regen. Obviously, all of these have a very long duration, so they should last you the entire fight, assuming that you don't die, but having them turned on will definitely help you out getting, well, more survivable, at the very least. I'm pretty sure defensive potions are going to be more valuable than the offensive ones, but go with what makes sense for you. Now, Valdaran has an enormous amount of abilities, which mostly revolve around lightning, like we said. My personal favorite is the lightning bolt that can hit me from a million miles away and stun me at the same time. This ability is also going to slow and reduce all of my resists by 40 for 3 seconds. So this one is a huge problem, and the way that you're going to want to deal with this is by building up some stun resistance as well. Stun resistance is a little bit harder to find than, your regular run-of-the-mill resistances, but this one is really necessary for big bosses on ultimate difficulty. So there are a few other abilities that he can cast that have different effects, but he has a couple ranged lightning ball abilities. One will cast in a circle, throw a bunch of little lightning balls out in a circle, and then there's one that he can throw out in a cone. But generally, these are easy to avoid with some terrain, so if you can kite him around a small wall, or at least kite him around a big enough piece of terrain, you can block a lot of the ranged attacks that he has. He also has a short-range Lightning Nova ability that activates on a chance when he is hit, so melee classes will probably want to consider a lot more hit-and-run type action. And then the last big abilities to worry about are his teleport and his swap. The teleport, super straightforward. You just don't want to be stunned when he tries to TP to conclude your existence. And then his swap is going to be a little bit more functional. Doesn't do as much damage nearly, but he does love to use it as often as possible. At least when, we're fighting him now. But basically, he's just going to target you from a really long range away and then poof you to where he is while he poofs to where you were. Not altogether, again, very damaging ability, but I'll be honest, when I get swapped and the camera change happens, I have a mini panic attack. So it's a little bit disorienting, but only dangerous if you're not paying attention. Also, he can potentially swap you into a pack of enemies if you haven't cleared out, all the little boys hanging out around wherever his location is. So definitely kill all the minions, kill all the trash before you start fighting the boss. Even if that means you got to take some damage from the boss, just delete it all. He doesn't summon his own minions, so it's going to be a straight up one-on-one as long as you take the time necessary to kill all the extra stuff. Now, once you've slain the beast, the number one most important thing you'll want to do is not forget about the Nemesis chest that spawns after it's dead. Cough, cough, wink, wink, I'm an idiot. The Nemesis chest will usually drop some pretty killer loot, so don't forget it. The other thing that can drop from these bosses, though, are called monster infrequents. I'm sure you're familiar by now. I sure hope so. In the case of Valdaran, though, we have two. You can either get Mantle, Valdaran's Mantle, or Valdaran's Shoulder Guard. As far as the Mantle goes, at least on Ultimate, the baseline stats are going to add 36 to your defensive ability, give you 30% elemental resistances, and then add +3 to Wind Devil and Panetti's Replicating Missile. That is just baseline what the item will give you. There are obviously way more stats that will pop up once you actually kill him and roll it. But, you know, there you go. Shoulder Guard is similar, but also opposite. So it's going to provide 42 offensive ability. It's going to give you 30% Aether Resist. And then it's going to give you +3 to Aether Ray and Flashbang. So pretty enticing for your Demolitionist Arcanist build. But, you know, that's neither here nor there either. Do whatever you want with it if you're even going to use it at all. And that does it, though, everybody. The Nemesis is down. The video is completed. I will be back tomorrow with our next Nemesis, Benjar, the Colossal of Chthonian fame, to continue down this list. So, peace out. I will see you there.